You know, it might be hard to believe, but when I was like younger, I was sort of shy around the ladies. Is that hard to believe?
It is hard to believe.
Turns out I should have just been a photographer.
Mike Evangelist just wanted to meet some girls and then practice taking photos. Now, 40-some years later, his pictures are giving us a fascinating glimpse of Minneapolis. And he joins us now to talk about his book. It's called Downtown Minneapolis in the 1970s. Mike, nice to have you here.
Hi.
This is so cool. Okay, so tell us how some of these pictures came about. You were riding the bus all over town, huh?
Well, not all over town, but I was fascinated by downtown Minneapolis because I grew up in New Brighton, and downtown was about as different from New Brighton as you could possibly be.
Yeah.
And so I first started going down there just on my own. I'd hop on the bus and take my camera with me. But then I eventually got a job down there working at the post office.
Oh, cool.
So I went down nearly every day, usually with my camera in tow.
Or like 3 or 4, like we saw in that picture there.
So what would you do? Is it like lunch break, or while you're on the bus, you just start snapping photos of people? And what are the people's responses?
That's a lot of questions all piled up there, but basically I took pictures of the things I experienced. So that might have been the ride on the bus, it might have been the lunchroom at the post office, it might have been while I was walking around downtown, because often I would take the bus directly from school to downtown, and I had an evening shift, so I often had time to kill before my shift started.
Okay, but you were trying to meet the ladies, Mike. I mean, let's be honest.
Well, that was part of it for sure. It's, I mean, I was always very shy, and the camera helped sort of shield me from actual social contact. I could sort of hold that up and maybe start a conversation. Worked once in a while.
So you, there's a picture of your future wife. Can you explain to me when this picture was taken, and had you guys already been in a relationship at this point?
Well, this was in 1974. No, sorry, 1973. This was our first date, or our second date. And so it was pretty clear to my wife that even back then that she had to put up with me having a camera with me nearly all the time.
Does she, like, would she have to say, like, can you just put the camera away for a little bit?
Oh, she said that from time to time, sure.
All right, how many photos have you taken throughout your entire life?
Well, it just happened that I use a software program called Lightroom to keep all my photos in, and I just passed the 100,000 mark.
Man.
In that. And there's still estimated about 10,000 images I haven't scanned yet from the old stuff.
Well, what I think is so interesting too is that I understand that, you know, when you're shooting on film, you're a lot more thoughtful about the images that you're capturing, because now we have that luxury of take 100 and then see which one is good. Well, if you take 100, you've burned through all of your film. So what was happening when you were trying to take those photos?
Well, it was, especially when I first got started, and I think, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got my first camera out here sitting on the table.
There it is.
And
Kids at home, that's a camera. And it doesn't make phone calls, no.
And I was 13 when I started with that camera. And I had a paper route, which is how I earned my $5 a week or whatever.
Yeah.
So to buy film and get it developed was a very significant expense. So I was very careful with every one of those shots. And really, to this day, I still shoot pretty much that same way. Even though if I want to hold the button down, you know, I can take a lot of pictures.
Right.
But I don't.
So let me ask you this. You start posting these photos on the Facebook group, Old Minneapolis. People seem to like them. What was the tipping point where you realized, instead of just having these on this Facebook page, I should put this in a book?
Well, it wasn't my idea at all. I mean, I put them, first I shared them just on my own Facebook page, and people seemed to like them, and they resonated with people, which surprised me, because these photos are really like my scrapbook of what happened to me. So it was sort of amazing that people related to them.
Yeah.
But a lot of people did, and they said, well, you should show these to somebody. And a cousin of mine recommended this Old Minneapolis Facebook page, and he said there's all kinds of people there who love this sort of stuff. And so I gave a bunch of photos to Jesse Jameson, who runs that site, and he started sharing them. And as a result of that, this writer named Andy Sturdivant, he wrote an article about Old Minneapolis and my photos for a column he writes. And that caught the attention of the Minnesota Historical Society.
And they said, let's put it
and
together.
they reached out and said, you know, this could make a book. We should talk about that. And
okay, tell us about your favorite image in the book, Mike. What's the one that really stands out to you the most?
Well, probably the one I like the most when I took it, and I still like it a lot today, is a photo of this woman who I assume was a street person. She was a little old lady talking to a cab driver.
Okay.
And it was fascinating to me at the time because again, coming from New Brighton, I had never seen anything like this before.
Sure.
Here's a woman who's, it's hard to make out in this photo, but she appears to have all of her possessions in a little toy wagon that she's pulling behind her.
Yeah.
Right.
And I loved it because it was so different than anything I had experienced before, but also because I was brave enough to take that picture, because she saw me there, but I still took it because I wanted to grab that. And I look at it now and I still think it's a good photo.
That's really cool.
I want to put up a couple side-by-sides here, then and now.
Yeah, this is fun.
First, Block E. Why don't we pull this up? So,
oh, man.
Look at that. I mean, it's like a little bit of time travel here.
It is very much, and I think, well, on the old Minneapolis page, for example, people deeply lament the loss of Block E and what it was back then. And people said, oh, it was grungy and seedy, but it was so interesting, and there were so many interesting things. And now, nothing against Mayo Clinic, but now you just got this big block of a building.
Yeah, it's definitely different. Okay, how about the Wigs and Things building? Let's talk about the difference there.
Well, this image on the left, I always like that one because there's all these people in their denim lined up, I think, to buy tickets for some concert or something. But that was fascinating to me at the time. It became the cover of the book, and I happened to be down there recently, and this is one of the few buildings that's still there.
Yeah, and looks so similar.
And then finally, how about a look at Nicollet Mall from Dayton?
Oh, this will break your heart.
And it definitely breaks my heart because of, if you look at the old shot from early 70s, you've got all the big department stores. This was taken from Dayton's, and you've got Donaldson's and Penny's and Powers, and now you've got Skyways and not many people on the street. And
it's an interesting look. I mean, some things have progressed for the better, and other things you would argue haven't progressed for the better at all. So that's why it's such a cool thing to look at and to look back at our town. I love it, Mike. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Nice to have you here. So Downtown Minneapolis in the 1970s is available through the Minnesota Historical Society. We have a link on TwinCitiesLive.com.
And if you would like to meet Mike and the writer of Downtown, Andy Sturdivant, they are having a book signing at the Mill City Museum on Saturday, April 2nd. You can hang out with them from 12 until 2 p.m.